Okay, Edma, you can start admitting people. Thank you. Morning, everybody. Just a sound check to everybody. Guys, we will be recording this session and being streamed to YouTube. So we will make the recording and the links available after the event. So we won't allow recordings during the event. But great seeing you guys. And I'm just talking so that you can set your sound. And let's make sure everybody is happy. So I'll be with you in a few seconds.
Morning, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Harry.
Morning. Hello, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning. Just a sound check for those who are joining and have joined. Good seeing everybody. Quite cold. I'm sitting here in Pretoria. It's quite cold this side. But Africa is not for sissies, as they say. Right. Good morning, everybody. let's start the session. We've been waiting for some time for this great event being hosted by Unitrans. Really appreciate Unitrans for hosting us today. And let's do a little bit of housekeeping while we're still admitting many people into the meeting. Ladies and gents, obviously a Zoom session, so please remember to keep yourselves on mute. We'll appreciate, otherwise we've got too many background noises. You're welcome to make use of the chat room to greet each other, share contact details. You're most welcome to do that, but the discussions, please keep the discussions related to the event and the topics being discussed. Also, ladies and gents, we're not going to have questions and answers during the event. We will keep that for the panel discussion at the end. So how we're going to do that at the end of this session, you'll be asked to either raise your hand or unmute yourself when you want to ask a question, and then only when recognized, you'll be able then to ask your question. Further, everything is quite well on our side, and I think everybody is now used to the virtual platforms. A few years ago, we still had to do a little bit of dedication to the beginning of the event, but I think we're all there now. Yeah, I want to share our program quickly. Let me just get my screen sorted this side. Alrighty, there's our program, and it's the 6th of June 2024. And we're talking about public passenger road-based transport in South Africa, challenges and opportunities. Ladies and gents, our host, Edmay Brink, she's the marketing manager of Unitrans. She will introduce you to the presenters and MC the event for us. But before we hand over to Edmay, I just need to give recognition to our valued sponsors of this event, sponsors and associates. And as you can see, that's the first half an hour of this meeting, but it's very, very important to give recognition because all our events are complimentary to the public, including the related uploads, for your downloads, the presentations and so on. So these valued associates and sponsors, they make the transport possible for us for more than 17 years already. And we really appreciate the support. So let's work through our valued sponsors and associates. There's the second half of our program. But we're going to have some fun. So you must listen carefully because we've got actually today 4 of these very nice rechargeable LED lanterns. And each one has got a power bank included as well. And so during the presentation of our sponsors and associates, listen carefully. At the end of that, we're going to ask 2 questions related to our sponsors. And the first person in the chat room who answers the question right will be the winner of the prize, and it will be couriered to you. At the end of the event, Basil's going to ask questions about the presentations, another 2 presentations, another 2 questions, another 2 prizes, and then you might be the winner of those 2 prizes. So lots of fun today. So listen carefully. You might be the winner today. All right. So they are our sponsors and associates, and we're going to quickly introduce you to them and listen carefully. So the Transport Forum has got formal associates, industry bodies that's associated with the Transport Forum. Obviously, there are many others involved with the Transport Forum. These are the formal associates, and let's have a quick look at them. So we've got the South African Association of Freight Forwarders. Let's have a look at their great video.
What does it take to compete on the world stage? To go head-to-head with the best of the best? Excellence, agility, resilience, the willingness to keep on evolving. It takes courageous leadership to be bold and chart the course, to connect the dots, bringing stakeholders together, to overcome the hurdles we all face, and to deliver best practice. It's about business at the click of a button, delivering at the speed of the internet, connecting people, products, and places, strengthening our supply chains, faster and more cost-effective than ever. Since 1921, we've given voice and vision to the freight forwarding industry, navigating the tides of international trade, evolving ever more sophisticated supply chains, bridging local and global markets to move our economy forward. Welcome to our world. The South African Association of Freight Forwarders, architects of transport for over a century.
Thank you, Saf. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got the Multimodal Inland Port Association who joined us last month, doing great work in expanding our network, also through the Multimodal Inland Port scenario, in other words, all the modes collaborating, also to develop our south branches of the network. So they're doing great work. We're going to hear a lot about this association in the future. Thank you very much, Swati Lord and team, for your support. We've got the South African Express Parcel Association, represented body of the voice of the express delivery industry in South Africa. We've got the South African Bus Operators Association. You can see they're the voice for the bus and the coach industry. Thank you very much, Saboa, for your support. We've got the Road Freight Association. You can see they say without trucks, South Africa stops. We've got African Rail Industry Association, ARIA. You can see they're doing lots of work in terms of third-party access to the country's railway network. Thank you very much, ARIA, for your support. The Safer Stops Association, uniting minds, sharing vision and resources, uplifting well-being, boosting road safety for South Africa's commercial drivers. Thank you very much, Nikki Scott and team, for your support. Got the following media alliances with the Transport Forum, and obviously many others involved, but these are no formal agreement of us. And we're looking at Freight News. Freight News, they've been actually part of the Transport Forum since inception. You can see news and features for imports and export decision makers. Thank you, Freight News. Look at the Railways Africa magazine. You can see they the African Continent Specialist Trade Technical Business-to-Business online publication covering all aspects of the rail sector. You obviously need to subscribe to these magazines, ladies and gents, otherwise you're missing out big time. You've got the focus on transport and logistics. So it's South Africa's oldest and leading transport magazine. We've got engineering news of Crema Media, and they shared a video of news highlights of last week. So let's have a look at their great video.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Engineering News and Mining Weekly magazine, published on Friday, 31 May 2024. In this week's cover article, Engineering News and Mining Weekly Deputy Editor Online Marlene Alnaldi unpacks the conditions for meeting the burgeoning copper demand. With copper demand expected to increase to 41 million tons by 2040, many regions are gearing up supply chains for critical metals. It'll be the responsible mining companies that will rise to the demand challenge and be competitive in the markets. The Engineering News features focus on motors, drives, and mechanical power transmission, where the time is right to invest in IE3 motors before minimum energy requirement standards are enforced. And heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration, where a supplier's V-belt range aims to improve HVAC systems uptime. The Mining Weekly features focus on consulting engineers in mining, where the upliftment of engineers is critical to industrial development. And materials, bulk handling, and logistics, where a new load haul dumper is engineered for hard rock mining. This week's business leader is Michelle Tinkoff, the Group Commercial and Imports Director at C. Steinweg Group. And as this week's cartoon shows, the election storm, which has just passed, carried with it developments that were at times entertaining at times revealing, and at times downright disconcerting. Attention will now turn to the governance arrangements that will follow in its wake. We hope you enjoy this week's edition of Creamer Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly. Be sure to subscribe to the magazine that offers you in-depth news about developments in the real economy by emailing subscriptions@engineeringnews.co.za. Happy reading and see you next time.
Thank you so much, Engineering News. Ladies and gents, our host for today, Unitrans, a leading provider of integrated end-to-end supply chain and logistics services that make it happen for their customers by streaming operations and reducing complexities throughout the entire supply chain. Let's have a look at this great video.
Africa and its people are going places, navigating new ways that move the vibrant continent forward. Unitrans puts them on the road to productivity, growth, and success, helping them get there safe and on time. We move millions of people across Africa, providing secure and innovative transport solutions that connect families and businesses, get learners to schools, students to universities, and employees to their places of work. We partner with independent operators, supporting and empowering them through advanced technology systems that enable their growth. Working with all industry stakeholders, we build the greater transport industry, expanding the essential network needed to move people safely. We are a trusted, innovative transport solution specialist with a purpose. Our belief in the power of doing accelerates economic progress across the continent and moves people towards their most prosperous future.
Thank you so much, Unitrans. We are so proud being associated with this great brand. We really appreciate your support. Ladies and gents, the platinum sponsor of the Transport Forum is C-Track, the great product, also Crystal. Let's have a look at this great video.
A lot has changed in the 4 decades that we've been keeping vehicles and business equipment safe and always visible. And we've learned a thing or two along the way. That's why our focus is firmly on the future. A future that goes beyond just tracking and reporting, challenging the status quo and exploring what the power of technology combined with AI can unlock for your business. Because talking did not earn us the reputation of being the leader in fleet telematics solutions. Pushing boundaries with constant innovation did, and putting our customers first by asking, what if, what's next, and what's possible? For the power of foresight over hindsight to plan ahead and make smarter decisions. What if you could predict the optimal route to increase on-time deliveries and significantly reduce long-term maintenance? What if you could predict the best tractor speed on the day to reduce wasted spray and cover more ground with precision? Or if something as trivial as a few centimeters could predict the difference between maximum efficiency or maximum risk? Because in our world, and likely in yours too, having insights that can be used as foresight with a crystal clear view of the future is the only thing that matters to remain ahead for better control, better efficiencies, and better overall performance. It's the telematics and AI solution that goes beyond tracking and reporting. Step into the future with Crystal by C-Track and experience the power to predict.
Thank you, C-Track. Ladies and gents, University of Johannesburg, been involved with the Transport Forum since inception, the Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management. Lots of mentoring to myself as well, Prof. Nadine Pisa, Prof. Jackie Walters, and them. Thank you very much for always supporting the Transport Forum. Really appreciate it. Ladies and gents, we've got a new kid on the block, a new gold sponsor of the Transport Forum called Data Noble. So I'd like to give them an opportunity to say a few words about our new gold sponsor.
Thank you, Harry, for the opportunity to say a few words. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Tian Pansel. I'm the CIO at Data Noble. I want to take this minute to talk about what it means for an organization to be customer-centric. It's easy to use the phrase customer centricity as a buzzword. And of course, all organizations care about their customers. But to be truly customer centric, you must operate based on what your customers want. You must talk to your customers. Many of you may be familiar with customer surveys. I'm sure you've completed one or been asked to complete one at some point in the recent past. You may have come across the question, how likely are you to recommend this particular organization to a friend or colleague based on a scale from 0 to 10? This question allows us to gauge customer loyalty based on an NPS score. The NPS score is one of the range of quantitative metrics we use in customer experience research. To get more clarity on the status quo of your organization's customers' experience, we also need to employ qualitative research techniques. This is where we allow customers to tell us in their own words what delights or frustrates them. Customer experience research findings form an efficacious and integral base for knowledge-based decision-making. This is at the core of a customer-centric organization. We must base our business decisions on data and not on our instincts alone. Data Noble has compiled a report titled Customer Experience Research, A Fresh Perspective in 2024 and Beyond. I would like to invite you all to contact us to get a copy of this document. We are happy to share it with you freely. Please email us at info@datanoble.com and we will promptly send it to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tiaan. What a great organization, ladies and gents. Take note of this name, Data Noble. Thank you for your kind support. We really appreciate it. Ladies and gents, Go Metro, gold sponsor with the Transport Forum. You can see revolutionize your fleet management with instant real-time insights. Go Metro, thank you very much for your gold sponsorship. We really appreciate it. Kuba, transforming ticketing. Take note of this name, ladies and gents. Kuba, transforming ticketing. Kuba is part of the ICM Mobility Group, which enables public and private transport to move into the digital era. Journey planning, smart ticketing, streamlining electronic payments, shaping the digital transformation of the mobility sector. Thank you very much, Kuba, for your gold sponsorship. Standard Bank, more than 160 years experience, many years with the Transport Forum. Thank you very much, Kathy Bell and team, for your support. We appreciate it. Let's have a look at the YouTube video.
The group purpose is Africa is our home, we drive our growth. And driving Africa's growth goes to the nature of an institution that we are, which is an organization that is at the center of the economy, giving people the ability to pay, to borrow, to invest, and by ensuring their assets. We do all of this to fulfill that purpose of a financial institution, which is to help people to become active economic agents and contribute to economic growth.
We have found increasingly that we need to impact the communities that we operate in a very positive manner. We need to conduct our business in line with international best practices. We are signed up to the Equator Principles, which helps to protect our environment. We want to make sure that we're investing in infrastructure. We want to make sure that we're deepening financial services so that more and more people have access to financial services.
You can never provide a full service offering to the clients if you don't do so on the basis of an integrated Standard Bank offering, i.e. a universal bank. When we look at types of projects and companies and individuals that we fund, we have to be sensitive to the impact that they make on those communities. Do they contribute meaningfully? Are they ethical in their own behavior? Are they sensitive to issues of environment? Are they sensitive to the way they undertake and develop their own projects and initiatives? And Standard Bank believes very, very strongly in ensuring that ultimately the growth that we desire is a growth that benefits everyone.
We finance the building of airports, bridges, ports, which contribute to economic growth and contribute to the hard infrastructure that society needs for development.
How do we show up in such a way that is real and human in our customers? And it goes both ways. How do we see customers as individuals, but how do we also show up not as a monolithic bank, but as a human bank, as a local bank? And you might say that it's is a bit of a paradox because we are a universal bank. It's true, but we are a universal bank that feels local, that feels real.
Countries in Africa embrace democracy, embrace good macroeconomic policies, they will attract foreign capital, into their economies. And we as a group are well positioned to access those capital flows and also help drive investments in the right sectors.
Thank you so much, Standard Bank. Ladies and gents, we've got Control Fleet. Execute like never before. Let's have a look at this great video.
At Control Fleet, innovation is at the heart of every decision we make. We execute like never before. Our features include planning, scheduling, driver application, and our value proposition is continuous value and execution for you. We love logistics and transport operations, our clients, and our aim is to provide them with new age technology, innovate their business, and take them to the future.
Definitely a company to talk to. Thank you, Control Fleet, for your gold sponsorship. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got Global Trade Solution, innovative solution, transforming the global supply chain, imports and exports, consulting strategy, software solutions, specialized services. Thank you very much, Louise Bijet and your team for your great gold sponsorship. Birthday Cargo, many years with the Transport Forum. Also soon, later on this month, going to host the Transport Forum event. Looking forward to that. Let's have a look at their video.
In the world of express freight, there's one name that stands above the rest: Bid Air Cargo. Our airport-to-airport line haul service is the backbone of South Africa's express freight industry. At Bid Air Cargo, we don't just deliver cargo. We go the extra mile to ensure a seamless and efficient experience in South Africa. With our unwavering commitment to excellence and improved technology, we handle your cargo with utmost care and deliver it on time, every time. Our dedication to service excellence is what sets us apart. We live by our core values of service excellence, mutual respect, integrity, and accountability. When you choose Bid Air Cargo, you're choosing a partner that takes pride in going above and beyond for your freight needs. From pharmaceuticals to perishable goods, automotive parts to live animal transportation, we handle a diverse range of commodities. Our attention to detail and precision ensure that your cargo arrives in perfect condition, no matter what it is. Our dedicated teams work tirelessly to guarantee the safety and efficient transport of your cargo. We leave no stone unturned to ensure your freight arrives at its destination intact and on time. With our advanced track and trace system, you can monitor your shipments in real time. Stay informed about the whereabouts of your cargo with just a few clicks. Our goal is to provide you with peace of mind and complete transparency throughout the entire journey. We understand that time is of the essence for our valued customers. That's why we offer a user-friendly online portal that simplifies the documentation process. Obtain quotations and create e-labels with ease, saving you valuable time and effort. Whether you have a small package or a large shipment, Bid Air Cargo handles it all with equal care and precision. Our ISO certification is a testament to our commitment to quality and professionalism. We don't just excel in domestic express freight, we also cater to your international cargo needs. No matter the size of your business, whether you're a small enterprise or a multinational corporation, you can trust us to handle your cargo with the same level of dedication and attention to detail. Connect with us today and discover the difference our innovative technology, seamless tracking, and customer-orientated approach will make to your operation. Bid Air Cargo. Same-day express every day, overnight express every night.
Thank you, Bid Cargo. Ladies and gents, Satari, previously known as Oricon, many years ago sponsored the Transport Forum from consulting engineers of note. You can see Impact Engineered. Thank you very much, Zutari, for your support in making the Transport Forum possible. You've got JC Auditors. You can see certification, compliance, one solution, very much involved in a road transport management system. So important nowadays to be able to do self-regulation. Thank you, JC Auditors, for the impact you have in our industry and for your support. Easy Clear, software solutions for customs clearing, freight forwarding, and logistics providers covering air, sea, road, and rail. So leading software provider for the customs and clearing industry. Thank you very much, Easy Clear. Ticket Pro Travel, ladies and gents, online booking tool, very convenient online booking tool. They say no contracts, no hidden fees, just good business with straightforward, fair pricing. So it's a very convenient online booking tool for your corporate needs. Thank you very much, Ticket Pro Travel. From the same group, they've got Ticket Pro Smart Tab, ladies and gents. Smart Tab system includes key features like comprehensive route management, flexible passenger payment methods, flexible route and fare product setup, shift and dispatch management, cashier system, inspection tools, and comprehensive MIS reports. Thank you very much, Ticket Pro Smart Tab, for your goal sponsorship. Take note of this date, ladies and gents, the Africa Supply Chain Excellence Awards. And also take note of the following.
Smarter Mobility Africa 2023 is done and dusted. We'll see you next year, 1st to the 3rd of October. As always, Smarter Mobility Africa Summit 2024, here we come.
Great event. Thank you, Smarter Mobility Africa Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's the fun time, the quiz. Let's see who's listened carefully during this presentation. You should keep the chat room now handy. And see whether you are the lucky winner. And well, it's not lucky, it's a job winner, of this quiz. And I'm going to ask 2 questions. The first person that answers the question right is to win the prize. So, right, here's the first prize. There's a new girl sponsor of the Transport Forum. It's a research organization. There we go. Tileru, you sharp. Congratulations to Tileru. Let me just make a note here. It is Data Noble. Thank you to you, and you're the winner of this one. Right. Second question. As a co-sponsor Transport Forum, they say they transform ticketing with solutions implemented in over 100 cities. They're part of the ICM Mobility Group. Let's see if you can remember who's that. Transforming ticketing solutions. There we go. Ubet Molele, congratulations. You've done that one. So let's make a note here. We will have the prizes couriered to you guys. Congratulations. You guys are very, very sharp. Ladies and gents, at the end of the event, Baz will also ask questions about the presentations, and there are our sponsors again. So let's see who's going to be the winner at the end as well. Just be reminded about our business directory. There's Olga Mashilu. It's only 450 rands per year, and you can get your company listed in the Transport Forum business directory. It's been outsourced to Olga's company. It's a BE initiative. So you're welcome to contact her and she will help you. So the presentations afterwards, it's the Transport Forum website, transportseek.com, and you can download the presentations you've seen today. Actually, all the presentations for the past 17 years, you can download from this site. Very powerful power bank, knowledge bank. And I'm not going to take you through these. I'm catching up on time. So, ladies and gents, back to our program for today. Let's kick off this great session. Public passenger road-based transport in South Africa, challenges and opportunities. And I'm handing over to our host and MC for this event, Ms. Edmay Brink. She's the marketing manager of Unitrans. Thank you very much, Edmay.
Thanks so much, Harry. Yeah, just from Unitrans side of, I would just really like to extend a warm welcome to each one of you. The warm is definitely needed today, especially in Cape Town where I'm based. It's wet and cold this morning. But yeah, very welcome from Unitrans point of view. And thank you, Harry, for giving us the opportunity to host this event with you. And to each of our speakers for your time and just for sharing your insights and knowledge with us today. I hope, or my hope really for today, is that each one of you would walk away with some nuggets of information on both the challenges and the opportunities that present itself within the passenger transportation space. But they will also leave you with some inspiration on how you can then go and make it happen in your organization, to your customers, and to the wider community that we live in. Harry, if you, unfortunately, tech site this morning in Cape Town did not cooperate, so Harry will be my presentation guide. Just a little bit of background in terms of Unitrans. You can go to the next slide, Harry. Unitrans is a leading end-to-end supply chain solutions company that has proudly been serving sub-Saharan Africa for over 100 years. Our Unitrans passenger solution in the staff, commuter, and managed service space is an integral part to our business in being able to deliver this complete end-to-end supply chain solutions to our customers. Our business model incorporates innovative design, implementation expertise, and the continuous delivery of world-class, cost-effective solutions. Now, as a provider of integrated logistics and operational services, our aspiration is to free up our customers so that they can focus on their core business. You can go to the next slide, Harry. Just a little bit of our scale. Unitrans over the years have grown to be one of Southern Africa's most recognized logistics and supply chain brands. And we proudly connect people and goods to moving individuals and freight seamlessly. With a robust fleet of vehicles of more than 5,000, ranging from trucks to vans, we span over 10 countries and we serve a diverse clientele. Just a little bit of the sectors that we play in. Harry, the next one. Unitrans leverage our expertise, our services, and our sector coverage to pool resources and knowledge that will provide a comprehensive solution tailored to long-term growth opportunities for our customer. Our key market sectors includes mining, where we offer safe, high payload solutions of both on and off mine solutions. In the agricultural space, we farm for the future, where we adopt a collaborative partnership approach to deliver customized end-to-end solutions for our agricultural customers. Then we also in the energy, petrochemical, and gas sector, where we offer high safety standard logistics solutions for this very specialized market. The consumer sector, where we specialize in delivering integrated end-to-end supply chain solutions, encompassing warehousing, transport, import and export services to a diverse industry. And then our passenger transportation, where we safely connect people and businesses. So for over the last 40 years, with a fleet of over 1,000 vehicles, our comprehensive services include personnel transport, events, student transportation, as well as commuter service. But adding to that, also our managed service solution, we empower other bus operators and customers to fulfill their transportation needs efficiently, ultimately enhancing operational effectiveness and customer service. We love to innovate, and I would just like to share with you, hot off the press, it's actually just hot off the manufacturing floor, our latest innovation in our new Quantum 4x4. Harry, if you can just play that video. Yeah, so our Unitrans passenger division is really an integral and important part of our business. And they are truly one of the only diversified passenger operators that cuts across all of the road-based passenger and commuter subsectors, with service offering ranging from sedans right up to articulated train buses and personalized shuttles and everything in between. And it's really from this forefront that we use this opportunity today to initiate this robust discussion around the challenges and the opportunities within this public transport passenger sector. We've put together you can go to the next slide, sorry, Harry. We've put together this range of speakers and topics to help ignite the thoughts around solutions for the challenges that exist within this space. We do want to invite you to participate today in the discussion throughout the webinar using the chat function, and then as well as later on with a panel discussion, the Q&A, where we would look at both the questions that was asked within the chat as well as being able to ask our speakers live later this morning. But with that being said, it's time for our first presenter. He also leads our business development division with Unitrans Passenger. Basil Govender has over 3 decades of transport and logistic experience, of which the last 2 decades have been within the bus industry. He has been the face to the voice of the bus industry whilst at Saboa, and now we are very glad that he's part of our team. Basil will set the tone for the event today by giving us an overview on the state of public transport with a focus on the post-COVID period to date. Thanks so much, Baz.
Thanks, Ed. Good morning, everybody. Let me do that standard harrowing experience of share screen. Harry, you'll give me a heads up that all good?
All good, Basil, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everybody. Exciting to see quite a few familiar names on the attendee list today. Thanks, Edmay, for the warm welcome. I just want to tap back to that video on that latest innovation and just thread through. So that was some exciting raw footage we took, pre-branding and tailoring the packaged delivery. Just to give context, this is an example of Unitrans innovation together with a partner that we have a collaborative venture with EnduroCo. This vehicle will actually, or has already been delivered to a mine in the Western Cape. It operates on the Namakwa Sands contract, and it's operated by a joint venture with a local host community operator. So if you think about all those things that fuse, those are some of the broader opportunities that come out. But just to reinforce, folks, we're officially open to orders. Anybody wants to take one of those, reach out to us. So let me move on to setting the scene with regards to the high-level overview for public transport, and then highlight some of the key challenges coming out of post-COVID era, and what are some of the opportunities that might come together with those challenges. So try to create a fuse for us. And I think in this process for today, it's not about finding the solution today. It's about us collectively collaborating. So let's use the market environment of coalition and collaborating and stretching our minds to start thinking about how we as stakeholders in the industry can start assisting and being part of the solution. So a couple of light moments in between, but it's so much detail. I've tried to thread as best I could everything, an overview, challenges, and potential opportunities. So light moments to thought provoke. This is something we take for granted. We all like to ride a limo in groups and have fun. But what would you do when the limo breaks down? You want lots of people to ride with you in the limo, but what you want is someone who will take the bus with you. And it starts with us individually in our thought process. So I've got a very busy first screen, but it really encapsulates everything in terms of what we want to look at from a COVID, post-COVID, and current situation. And I've sourced and drawn a lot of the data from the Department of Transport, National, who are ultimately the custodians and regulator and director of all affairs transport. So, but from a snapshot overview, everybody would know this, or it's been said ad nauseum that our public transport ecosystem is in a state of flux. It has been in a state of flux since 1997. There have been great pockets of excellence and movements in here and there, but the momentum has not been sustained purely because policy, strategy, planning, implementation, execution, depending which modality you are involved in directly or holistically, they've not moved consistently or not kept pace with the requirements to meet national demands. And then on the onset of the 2020s and through COVID, many of our travel and travel demand trends and behaviors have changed. So fundamentally, we need to keep agility and keep reshaping our thought processes. I've often said it, many commentators have said it. I think one of the biggest criticisms we have of a government that tries its best to deliver is the misaligned and sometimes non-aligned intergovernmental approaches. What happens at national vis-a-vis provincial, vis-a-vis district and municipalities, not necessarily always aligned for various reasons, but it does hamper and slow down progress, and then successive governments' ability to maintain traction is impacted on. So again, through this process, all it does is entrench a widening gap for localized informal mobility services to grow, to mushroom, to operate, and because there's an underserviced sector of our population and they need mobility. And if you don't address it correctly, informal processes start. The good or the positive part is through the Department of Transport, through CSIR, is constantly collating data. What we need is probably more access to that data and more transparent revelation of the data. So then I want to tread through from the 2020s. So as I said, I've sourced most of the intel from the Department of Transport's annual reports. And critically, though, there is no report for 2021-22. And there's a bit part report of 2020-21. I think some of the COVID impacts around that. So I've taken the latest available, and we expect maybe the 23-24 report, now that the financial year end is done, to come out in a couple of months' time. So I've focused our approach or my thread through the funding angle, essentially through national, through treasury, and through all the structures. We get two conditional grants for public transport. The one is the PTOG, Public Transport Operation Grant, and the other is the PTNG, which is the network grant. Then in the middle sector, they just as a very high snapshot for you, talking to how these grants roll out. So with regards to grant one, which is kind of the first two slides, it gives us throw there in terms of the number of vehicles subsidized and all the kind of ratios that it feeds to. But critically, most provinces did not spend the 2023 transfers because as it would, the government says, or the the provinces report that operations take place until the end of March, and claims then get submitted in mid-April. So it reflects a kind of an underspend. But given that this reporting is coming kind of on the back of the heels of the pandemic and all the disruptions we don't have a line of sight as to what the impact is through COVID and out of COVID in terms of ridership. So I've done my best to extract some sort of key takeaways from the PTOG. What I can tell you that is the Eastern Cape, Free State, KZN, and the Western Cape were the only provinces that utilized the budgeted allocation. Now, it would take too much time and space to list everybody, but you can consult this report. It's accessible. It's called the Department of Transport Annual Report. So out of 9, 4 provinces fully utilized their budget. The main underspend was within Gauteng. That's a 28% underspend, but it's got some challenges that are beyond immediate rescue. The Northwest Transport Investment Contract, NTI, is well below 40% of operations. They have their own operational challenges. Then reporting in the total were contracts that were previously abandoned by PATCO and Brakpan bus services, which are still not in full operation, so the allocations are not being fully utilized there. So Grant 1 talks to all the national, just over 116 contracts for subsidized commuter services. Grant 2 talks to the PTNG, which is primarily aimed at providing funding for the accelerated construction and improvement of public non-motorized transport infrastructure, BRT, integrated municipal public transport networks, but also to support planning, regulation, control, management, and operations for sustainable municipal public transport network services. You hear the word network often, so the funding is ring-fenced for that. The municipalities mostly have used, but the way the reporting structure falls, it shows an underspend because the municipal's financial year ends and fiscal years don't necessarily coincide with the national processes to that regard. So sitting in all of this in terms of national and subsidized budgeting, there's also the taxi recapitalization program. Now, that in itself has an entire separate process of management and allocation. Excuse me, but what I can find is that according to the department's estimates, it's well below what they wanted to achieve. So in this year, reported to 23 March, a total of 2,576 taxis were scrapped during the period. And I think one of the key comments I took out of that was to ensure that the uptake by the industry is improved and that more of the old taxi vehicles are scrapped. The department is in the process of gazetting a cutoff date. I didn't find specifically, it may have been gazetted, but more importantly, it's considering the inclusion of learner and cross-border vehicles in this space into the taxi scrapping thing. So it's important that we transition in a period or in a transformed environment where this is managed properly and taken care of. Then just to pick your thought process on the funding even further, I've just taken the segment there that I've reported and I've broken it out. So in terms of the subsidized commuter services, the total subsidy for the period equated to just over 7 billion. The total spend equated to just over 6 billion. And there was a 12% return to Treasury. So unused funds get returned to Treasury. And in terms of the, I must apologize, in terms of the BRT services, it hadn't updated there. There was a underspend, but as I said, the municipalities' financial year end doesn't coincide. So it's not necessarily an underspend in terms of not utilized, it's just a reporting period. But just to also take the thread through, municipal bus services, which are another tier of transport, all running at this point in those four legs: subsidized commuter services, BRT, municipal bus services, and informal or minibus taxi services, very often competing in the same space, running parallel to same origin destinations, and just on different frequencies and different methodologies of planning and execution. Now, the subsidies for municipal bus services come from the municipal coffers. That's the taxpayers' money. They also use that to provide capital subsidy to municipal-owned operators. And then, as we know, we've often referred to the taxi industry as informal. They are probably making better strides in the space than public awareness is about. They are making huge efforts towards formalization, but they're still unsubsidized. So that's a challenge that needs to be factored into that process. Just to pique your interest for some of the kind of key ratios that come out regarding the grants, the subsidy per month per bus that comes out of that equation in the number of vehicles subsidized is around 92,500 Rand monthly. The average passenger per trip that comes out based on the trips and stats there is at 47 passengers. That's a 73% ridership. Or looking at it alternatively as an opportunity, it's a 27% capacity. And the average trip distance comes out at around 40 kilometers. So I do know that entities like TAG and all the municipal planning processes use some of these key indices as the basis for them to plan. Excuse me. So let's take a look at what the vision is articulated. And I'm not going to go through the entire thing. Harry tells me that everybody does have access to this post-process. But in essence, the DOT's desired outcome is to achieve seamless integration of all modal public transport operations. Now, we've had these discussions through various iterations of government, different administrations, different MECs, different public ministers. But we are not making the kind of progress and pace towards achieving that goal. And I think the key elements they talk about, including demographic, geographic, economic, and technological trends, talks to intergovernmental relations, spatial planning, human settlements, safety and security, CSIR. Nowhere in the process to date is private sector actively brought to the table to talk about those visions and modalities. And I'm hoping today's discussion stimulates how we get to the table as well, to be part of that process. Okay. So in summary, pulling out from the vision and inherent challenges, the macro challenges, we need to position public transportation in its entirety and then within the mass mover process to get the same status that is afforded to other basic human rights, other social services, health, education. Yes, priorities move, but in terms of the narrative, the access to transportation should be equated in that realm. If we want it to become the real heartbeat of the economy. Then to make progress, municipalities must, as a prerogative, finalize and implement integrated transport plans. There are various stages of progress, but there's also, when there's a change of regime, it stalls. We have to assist and be part of the process to eliminate the fragment and misaligned intergovernmental approach, because that does not help us. From our point of view as the private sector or the other realm of stakeholder, we need to manage our competing ideologies and expectations. And we also, through the process, need to eliminate hegemony and monopoly and control, and we need to move towards transformation and embrace it. All of that is a driver towards the common vision. So to do that, we have to achieve a reduction in the cost of traveling. We have to improve services and facilities, get to a regulated fare structure and pricing that's equitable across modes, safety and security to be at the right level to enhance travel modes and switching patterns, but most importantly, to ensure that we have improved sustainable planning. And again, I've touched on spatial planning, land settlement. We often hear talks about mega cities, special economic zones. All of these are done in isolation, and there needs to be a harmonized approach. Without a doubt, this cannot be done by government alone. It is not only up to them. This cannot be done by the private sector with a mode-centric bias approach. So it calls for a more collaborative, inclusive, and democratic approach to that. So that at that point, yeah, there was something that I've always sort of carried with me. The ex-president of Chrysler said, continually faced by great opportunities, but when you look at them, they're actually brilliantly disguised as unsolvable problems. So let's talk a little bit about how we transition to opening our minds around the opportunities. One of the things I thought was a good pillar, which the department was hanging its hat on as well, and again, it's in the annual report, page 81, towards building a strong and inclusive economy. Yeah, we can break all of that down, inclusive, all the modes, all the previously disadvantaged, and all the stakeholders. The outcome was a private sector participation framework, which the department envisaged. They had a zero base to guide this to. So they set a 5-year target to have it developed and implemented. Somehow, somewhere, round one was not approved by cabinet. So they had to do some new work there. And under the period of review, they had to do an assessment impact, which was finalized, and then get that through the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation. So now it's going to be a resubmissions. So I'm hoping, and we should all be hopeful, that this gets processed and approved, because it's a framework that brings us as the private sector to the table. Okay. Excuse me. In terms of opportunities, I did a key extract on the subsidy policy. It talks to three main elements. It's in a draft form. It's open for comment. It has gone through 2 phases of engagement with key stakeholders, and it has been gazetted. So the public transport draft policy talks to working to rebase the funding and the budgets for public transport, talking to produce a roadmap that will result in infrastructure and services being funded to 5% of GDP by 2030. Keep that in mind, 5% of GDP at our current fiscus is a big ask. And then it talks to producing 52 model integrated plans, that's at municipal, metro, and district level by 2027 to align with this policy for implementation by 2030. So all of that says we've got to change this picture. Has anybody taken a part of the survey? So this is light-hearted. It talks to about touching a nerve point here. It says, in this pie chart, why do you use public transport? Blue is cheaper, more comfortable, and the major reason I use it is because I can drink. Okay. It is light-hearted, but when you do a deep introspection, it talks to why do people not use public transport and why should they be using public transport? So I've had some bugs here, so just give me a sense. I'm Sorry, Ari, I've just from my computer crashing there, it's pulled through an incorrect version. So just bear with me.
No problem.
I know you gave me a strict timeline, so I will do my best to come back to it. Apologies, folks. I had to switch to a different laptop last night after my current one took a nosedive. And somewhere along the line, the renaming didn't happen. I'm going to be loading up Nairi. If you can just tell me that it's coming through.
Just
Do you have
live view, we
success?
can see it. Yeah, we can see it, just
Okay.
live view. Perfect.
All right. So yeah, I was on the, yeah, apologies, and thanks for indulging me there. So I was talking to the draft national public transport subsidy policy. I've spoken through the first 3 points where we have to produce the integrated transport plans. And then it also proposes that contracted scheduled bus services gets managed, that's currently managed by provinces, get moved down to be taken over by municipalities, and that has to intrinsically form part of their integrated transport planning. And then incorporating the assistance to the minibus taxi industry to consolidate them into a more formal process, and then be able to contract with government. And in that mix, talks to evaluating appropriate technology solutions to introduce cashless and automatic fare collection systems. Now, you'll hear some of the impacts that can have from a technology point of view in later presentations. And I've spoken to this extract. So in terms of taking that forward, how do we consolidate all of this into the opportunities? So the idea is that the approved private sector participation from framework then develops into a proper model for public-private partnerships. So we need to nurture and maintain existing policy frameworks and resources, and then harness the triple P approach. Okay, and part of the potential roadmap towards that, and that's what today is about, to stimulate the process. How does a triple P work? How can it get seamlessly initiated and maintained? So from a government and essentially a National Department of Transport perspective, the triple Ps are used from the PSP framework to design and procure long-term planning that is sustainable. Now, there are some key accountabilities on their side. That would talk to owning infrastructure, managing the legislation and the regulatory frameworks, a joint funding approach, create policy certainty, incorporating alternative energy vehicles, electric vehicles, incorporating inclusivity of all modes and all sectors. But all of that has to be aligned across all government tiers. From the private sector point of view, this is where perhaps the broader capacity and skill set lives, and has been created in terms of institutional knowledge. So there needs to be a skills transfer. So if government owns, manages infrastructure over long-term processes, the management and operations can be handled by the expertise and skill set of the private sector. That would also include joint funding, but it will allow for the innovation and modernization to happen at the pace that it should happen. And most importantly, it should talk to the transformation requirements for ESD and localization. So what does that mean in short layman terms? It's a collaborative approach. For that approach to happen, there needs to be a central hold or a war room. So there must be a thought given to what was initiated around 2013-14, a National Transport Forum, but through the years and through the changes of administration, that's fallen away, almost to regenerate the brains trust or the war room. And from there, the implementation goes to focusing on efficiencies, optimization, and continuous improvement. And one of the huge opportunities that comes out of this kind of process and creates is long-term concessions for everybody to get involved and commit and invest for proper returns. So just closing off in terms of the scene setting, Richard Branson, to quote, says, business opportunities are like buses. There's always another one coming. Now, for a long time, we felt there isn't another one coming. And I think we're in the throes of a transitional period that allows us to say, there'll be plenty more buses coming. Do we want to be part of it? But for us to get that a sustainable solution, it has to be a collective commitment. We can't run away from the fact that we need to transform and transition. We can't be mode specific. This collective commitment needs to converge so that all opportunities can talk to and are available for a common vision for public transport in that sense. So folks, I hope I have, outside of that little breakdown on the limo, given you some thought stimulation there, and will allow for the rest of the team to talk to some of the more specific issues around opportunities and the technological advancements. Harry, thank you, Edme. Thank you, Harry.
Thanks so much, Basil. Harry, if you can just bring up the agenda for us. But Basil, I will get on a limo and on a bus with you. So next time you're in Cape Town, either the limo or bus will do. Okay, so our next speaker is from AECOM, which is a global leader in infrastructure design, delivery, and management, with a vision to create a better world by uplifting communities, improving access, and sustaining our planet. From AECOM, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Chris, a civil engineer by training and currently the Director Transportation and the leader of the transportation business line for AECOM in Africa. As part of the GIP consortium, he's currently working on the 25-year plan update as the road-based public transport workstream leader. Chris will share with us some of the key issues and imperatives around planning for sustainable public transport. Thanks so much, Chris, and over to you.
Can I ask, can you hear me and see my presentation?
Yes, all good.
Thanks, Edme, Basil, and Harry for the opportunity to do this presentation. I was requested by Basil to participate in this forum based on, as was said, being part of the GIP consortium that is doing an update to the 25-year integrated transportation plan for Gauteng. Our client is the Transportation Authority for Gauteng. And perhaps just a rider that I'll be showing some of the information that we have compiled on the status quo for the plan. but the thoughts and views at the end of my presentation are more personal and does not necessarily reflect the views of the Transportation Authority as such. So just the points of discussion, just to highlight some of the facts around the public transport status quo, and specifically in Gauteng, although I would think that it's very much reflective of what's happening in most urban areas, given the fact that Gauteng is an urban city region, largely, that it is reflective of what's happening elsewhere in the country as well, in South Africa, when it comes to public transport. Then just some key issues and challenges, and hopefully it's not too much of a duplication of but rather confirmation of what Basil has shown earlier. Then just to touch briefly on the legal or legislative and policy framework for public transport planning. Again, some of the things Basil has already raised, but I'll just again confirm and briefly highlight some of those. And then just some thoughts on the way forward on planning and the things that should receive attention when looking at planning of public transport going forward. This slide just and the table in here, and again, I don't want to go through all the detail, that's because there's a lot of detail on the slide, but just rather to illustrate, if one looks at the road-based public transport services that one finds in Gauteng, it's a whole range of them, as you can see in the left-hand column under mode, ranging from BRT right down to minibus taxis. However, it's a very fragmented system, and it's also still very much reflective of what we had, with the exception perhaps of the BRTs and the expansion of the minibus taxi industry of their services to meet growing demand as our cities change and expand. But the planning responsibility sits across a whole host of entities. The funding sources as well, if one just looks at the third column, ranging from DORA, PTOG, PTNG, Gauteng Department of Education, and so on. Our payment systems that we find are differing or not integrated, and a lot of people still pay with cash, which is probably characteristic of our society at the moment, where a lot of people are still unbanked. But then just a few sort of comments that I would like to highlight. If one looks at the BRT systems, the implementation has been much slower than anticipated. If one looks at our provincially contracted subsidized bus contracts, given the fact that the sustainability of these services are under pressure, the fleets are aging, and well, the route networks have stayed substantially the same or unchanged over the last 20 to 30 years, whereas our urban conurbation has changed. Our municipal bus services also are very much fulfilling, well, more or less the same role as they have previously, sort of serving the suburbs of most of our urban areas, and are duplicating many of our other services. Our scholar transport services, the quality of the services and the monitoring of services are lacking. And perhaps just the interesting thing, and it's not reflected on this table, is we've actually found that there's another set of operations that we initially weren't aware of, is there are commercially operated scholar transport services contracted by schools and parents that are outside any of the systems shown on this table. And then the minibus taxi industry, that's also facing challenges with and financial pressure and their longer term sustainability. I mean, costs are increasing, disposable income of passengers are not increasing at the same rate as costs. which is putting the industry under pressure and means their vehicles are becoming older, and it's becoming more difficult for them. So just in conclusion then, our existing public transport services and the service provision framework is very fragmented in nature. And that's our policy, our legislation and policy is driving to change that and transform that. However, it's not on the ground actually materialized to the extent that one would have hoped. Perhaps just sort of, and I know there's a lot of detail on here, but just to show what it looks like on the ground, these are the train network and the rail network that one sees, as well as the BRT networks. Then if one adds on top of that the public transport operational grant or subsidized bus services in the sort of pink purple color, together with also the train feeders. And then on top of that, the minibus taxi services. And one can see that our sort of more dense urban areas are served quite well as the sort of township areas. However, there's a lot of duplication and inefficiencies because of the sort of fragmented nature in which services are operated on the ground. And also because a lot of these services have been planned in isolation of one another, not as integrated networks. And the planning was done to a large extent by operators to maximize their market capture. So, I mean, in some quarters it's called destructive competition, but let's just call it duplication. Then perhaps just if one then looks at, we've actually moved backwards. If one looks at the National Household Survey and just from a traveler perspective, the commuting times in 2014 were 47 minutes on average. That's gone backwards, or takes much longer. It's increased to 56 minutes. Access by walking, often called the first and last mile to public transport, and the stops or access points to public transport services has increased from 8 minutes to 14 minutes. Public transport remains expensive, but also if one looks at the percentage that the average user pays, and I mean, there's this KPI that travelers should, or commuters should not spend more than 10% of their disposable income on transport. Now, if one looks at the statistics in 2014, 55% of commuters spend more than 10% of their disposable income. That's increased to over 60% if one looks at the household survey results of 2019. Less people are working 5-day weeks, that's, and I'd assume if one were to look at statistics post-COVID, that would probably even be a lower percentage. So perhaps just a couple of facts or issues, and as I said, Basil has raised some of them, so my apology if there's a bit of a duplication. 70% of households do not have access to cars. That's 4% more than it was in 2014. Funding shortages have significantly impacted on the more formalized public transport services. Inflation, fuel increases, and the weakening of the rand, and the inability of passengers to absorb fare increases impacts on the sustainability. I've raised that before. And this results in aging fleets, the reliability of services, and I mean, there's also, if one looks at the subsidized bus services, that is a real challenge as well, not just the other operations. Then the lack of facilities and also the deterioration and of the quality and state of facilities that one finds at stops, at ranks, and so on, has deteriorated. And that's largely due to insufficient maintenance of facilities, and that directly impacts on the user experience. Then the deterioration of commuter rail, and I mean, we're very familiar with the situation, although I must say I'm very encouraged, at the rate that PRASA is managing to revive their commuter rail network, specifically in Gauteng, and that they have sort of reactivated quite a number of commuter lines in part or in full. But that is forced passengers to move across to road-based modes, and that impacts congestion and also impacts the environment with higher greenhouse gas emissions. First and last mile access is inconvenient and unsafe in many instances. I mean, I often say that transportation planners should probably spend one day a week on their feet, not in cars, but on public transport and walking around. And I mean, I just challenge, and especially in winter when it's still dark. I can remember I once walked from Belombre station, which is a major sort of transport interchange in Tshwane, both from bus services, taxi ranks, the Bloed Street, Boom Street rank, and then also the PRASA stations. People walk in the dark. There are broken sidewalks. And then they have to walk probably 14 minutes to half an hour to the places where they work, and that's not encouraging people to actually see public transport as a viable option. So the moment that people have another option, they rather opt to use their private vehicles, and therefore, where we are at the moment, public transport users to a large extent are captive users. They're not choice users. Then challenges is the integration between land use, transit, it's called transit-orientated development, and public transport is not very efficient in serving because of the low densities, but also the way that often our neighborhoods are planned. These gated communities make it even more difficult for public transport to serve many areas. Then if one specifically looks at Gauteng, which consists of 5 metros and district municipalities, there's a lot of cross-border travel, and some of the formalized services are planned sort of within metro areas, and neglecting the cross-border travel. Our systems are not very optimal. We've touched on the fragmented planning and funding of public transport across the 3 spheres of government. Basil raised the whole issue of public transport is receiving disproportionately little funding relative to the role in the economy and society. Currently, and these are numbers quoted from the second draft of the National Public Transport Subsidy Policy, about 0.8% of GDP is being spent, whereas ideally it should be around 5%, and that's the target for 2030. There's often a lack of consensus on the role of modes, and I'll talk to that a bit later. And the most appropriate model for modal deployment onto integrated public transport networks. Integration between modes are not optimal at facilities when it comes to fare media integration, also the availability of information. One has to go, if you want to travel just as a person that's not necessarily familiar or does not do that on a daily basis using public transport, just to find information on how to travel from point A to B is not easy. You probably have to go onto multiple websites, so there's not a central point for obtaining service information, the cost of using services, if one has to use more than one mode. Then a major issue is safety and security, which is often totally neglected, or the thinking and planning is that's another department's problem or another department's mandate. And also the first and last mile, the walk access to public transport is really a challenge. And this includes also issues around gender-based violence. And then service quality means that public transport service offerings are not attractive to choice users. If one really wants to pursue sustainable transport and a shift from private to public transport, there's a lot of the service offerings need to become far more attractive to choice people or people that has various options in choosing how they want to travel. Then I just want to briefly deal with the legal and policy framework for public transport planning, starting with the National Land Transport Act of 2009. Sorry. And I've just sort of cherry-picked a few sort of statements out of each of these policy documents and legislation that relates to public transport planning. So just looking at the National Land Transport Act is the Transport Act. Land transport must be integrated with land use development. In other words, the integrated development plans and land use planning. So it's development planning and land use planning, spatial development frameworks. The types of plans are set out in the Act, starting at a national level, the National Land Transport Strategic Framework, which needs to be prepared by the Minister, which provides an overall framework within which planning should take place. Then at a provincial level, MECs have to, every 5 years, prepare provincial land transport frameworks, again, more at a strategic level, and then where the rubber hits the tar, ITPs, integrated transport plans, has to be prepared by planning authorities. So that's municipalities. Integration of bus contract systems need to happen into the larger public transport system, and the Act is fairly specific on how that should happen. Authorities contract operators to provide public transport services, and if one looks at road-based public transport, that's either through negotiated contracts, subsidized, or commercial contracts. The contracting has to be done through approved local integrated transport plans and integrated public transport networks. And then all public transport services, road-based services, has to be or are regulated through operating licenses. Then looking at a fairly recent document that was developed that was updated, developed, I'd rather call it developed because it's been quite some time since the Department of Transport developed the National Land Transport Strategic Framework. So it's a framework for the period 2023 leading up to 2028. Again, just taking a couple of sort of pertinent statements from this framework. Planning of infrastructure and operations needs to prioritize densification, promote public transport over private transport, improve local access, and lower carbon impact. Long-term solutions must be aimed at integrating public transport, land use, change spatial layouts of cities, shorten travel distances, and reduce the cost of travel. While solutions, yes, sorry, I'll just very quickly go through it then. While solutions need to address access needs, subsidies need to be applied to drive restructuring of urban form. Then initial priority needs to be for public transport is to radically improve planning, operations, infrastructure, and the quality of service for customers to facilitate modal shift, and then all various number of aspects of public transport service provision that needs to receive attention. I think just in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through necessarily the white paper because it's a very similar to some, or just unpack certain of the things further. And Basil has also spoken about the second draft National Public Transport Subsidy Policy, which also has to be taken into account when looking at the planning of public transport. So what I'd rather like to do is to just go on some thoughts on taking planning forward. Now, on the 25-year plan, we had a workshop fairly recently that consisted of 101 participants from various entities, public sector, private sector, and so on. And some of the key takeaways, if looking at planning going into the future, we need new thinking. Safety and security is important. Integration was time and again sort of highlighted. And the planning for future needs to be sustainable. So then just a couple of thoughts in conclusion, if one wants to look at the way forward on planning, is that integrated public transport planning and integrated public transport networks should include joint planning. And I mean, Basil again has highlighted that in his presentation, across all spheres of government, but also including the private sector and all stakeholders and role players. Contracting and deployment of all nodes onto these networks, there needs to be adequate attention to promoting transit-orientated development. In other words, to make sure that the land use and urban form and the public transport services talk together. The deployment of appropriate modes, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time, and that's often where there's not consensus. In the early 2000s, there was this almost thinking that BRT is the silver bullet that's going to solve all public transport demand and supply challenges in the country, which, if one really looks at that, and I want to use an analogy of a road system. If one looks at the road system, there's a clear hierarchy from local roads to collectors, arterials, and freeways. Now, why there's a hierarchy is to provide access as well as mobility. A freeway provides optimal mobility, but fairly low accessibility. Whereas as one goes to local streets, provides optimal accessibility, but there's not a huge, doesn't provide for huge mobility. Now, the same goes for public transport. If one looks at the rail system, it provides for high levels of mobility in most instances, high throughput, but there's for accessibility, it's not, that's not the purpose. Whereas if one looks at the minibus taxi industry, it provides a door-to-door service. So it provides high levels of accessibility, but as far as throughput is concerned, it's not always that optimal. So if one looks at an integrated public transport network, one needs to look at the whole range and how all these modes fit together and which corridors and routes and so on there are higher access needs and where higher mobility needs can be served. Then definitely something that needs to receive urgent attention, and I mean the subsidy policy is moving towards that, is sustainable economic and financial support to public transport, but also within available budgets and resources. I think sometimes one also becomes a bit too idealistic. Then my last slide, integrated strategies and implementation of passenger personal safety and security is very important. And as far as planning, one needs to bring all the relevant role players together to ensure that travel is safe. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to make our public transport service offerings attractive to the broader traveling public. Then I've raised the issue of information and payment systems that need to be integrated that cannot be mode specific, because then it's, we limit choices, and also considering for choice users to consider using public transport. The maintenance and management of transport infrastructure, one often finds that as part of budgets, there's budget for actually upgrading or providing facilities, but the whole issue of management and also budgets for maintenance is overlooked. And therefore, one sees over time how the quality of infrastructure and facilities deteriorate. And again, that forms a large part of the user's travel experience when they get off and onto vehicles. Then, very important is the mainstreaming of the minibus taxi industry. It is probably the biggest private sector investment in the public transport industry, and one needs to leverage off that investment, and through, for example, corporatization, professionalization, and also to enable and bringing in the industry to participate in the integrated public transport networks. And then my last point is prioritize non-motorized transport. My perception is it's been dealt with as a afterthought, people walking the first and last mile infrastructure, and then also in doing so, again, looking at safety and design and universal access. Thank you very much. That's my presentation.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for sharing. And I know as you work on your plan, it's no easy task. We live in a very complicated country with lots of challenges. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your presentation and insights with us today. Our next presentation, and the last one just before we have a comfort break, is someone from KenCard, which was established 25 years ago as a specializing in automated fare collection solutions. However, nowadays, KenCard company produces intelligent transportation systems in-house with pioneering technology. Mr. Inash is a market strategist at KenCard. He's committed to enhancing mobility for everyone. Specializing in smart mobility solutions for public transport, he strives to foster partnerships and drive initiatives that improve public transport systems quality of cities and regions. Mr. Inash will share a real use case study on enhanced efficiency with us today. And thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to what you're going to share with us.
Hello, Adam. Thank you very much for organizing such a wonderful event to Transport Forum and Unitrans. As a foreigner, apart from your country, I can say that the country is suffering from organization of public transportation. It's not specifically for South Africa, but I can tell you that African continent suffering from lackness of regulations, unorganized public transport networks, and unconnected ones. So I wanted to give an aspect of intelligent transportation system with some use cases. Let me just share my screen. That's why your effort as Transport Forum and Unitrans, your effort is really valuable for the continent. As a public transport and mobility dedicated person, I can tell you that this will find its place in years maybe, but it will. And today I will tell you about unlocking the power of interoperability. And we do produce and develop the systems regarding intelligent transportation technologies. So I will explain you and enhance the efficiency of these connected systems, public transport networks. And we will also hear a real use case that this is the way of public transport authorities, mostly, but affecting as well the operators by granting and some other supports, and also integrated mobility that meets the requirement, especially for passengers. So let's just check what is the power of interoperability. It will allow you to manage your entire fleet. For example, if you are an authority, then you have VRT and bus systems, and you can connect them and you can manage them from one. In all over the world, they call it Operation Control Center. But in South Africa, a new dream came up as Transport Management Center. This is the unlocking the power of interoperability comes to manage a well transport network and the split operations from one transport management center. And it will give a sustainable and efficient public transport network and system for passengers, and also brings the feeling of freedom for transit payments on the other hands, because as you manage all from one place, from one center, the passenger will be able to use one fare media for all types of passenger transportation vehicles. When it comes to what the components are for efficient interoperability, and should be in the first place an account-based ticketing that is flexible to integrate with any modes of transportation, and you can even apply any fare structures in seconds. Like in 10 seconds, you can just change from flat fare to peak of times or peak on high times fare, as a leverage the fare payment like 50% or 40% as you want. And the other thing that account-based ticketing brings is the various fare media that we will see on the other slides can be accepted in the fare validation equipment. We call them validators. Another thing is that, let's say, management system, its fleet management system is required, because you need to do vehicle tracking and you need to check the health status of the vehicle as well. That the technology can be provided, and so on. The others, the benefits can be discussed, but in the first place, you need to check the existing the position of the vehicle, and also the fleet health status of existing condition of the vehicle. Another thing is the passenger information system. Thanks to vehicle tracking system, passengers can do trip planning thanks to mobile application or on website, as you see on the right down of the slide. Thanks to mobile application, passenger can get informed by any information regarding the bus or vehicles or transport system. And it's another element of passenger information is LCD and LED screens that can be established in vehicles, in buses or minibuses, or in safe stations for outdoor passenger information, informing the passengers. And operators may choose to use body video surveillance system, but to establish a well-secured transport network, you need to have this video surveillance, and we provide all of these data by using one, again, general user interface that can be managed by any operator or authority, and that's flexible to arrange any interface for these technologies. And at the end, by implementing these, you can reach to a well and enhanced level that is a subject of my presentation, an enhanced and efficient multimodal transport integration that you can make by these high-end technologies. So what are the other components of fare validation equipment? The first of all, onboard computer that we produce in-house provides the connectivity between the servers, back office, and devices. And we use IoT, Internet of Things, Internet of Devices. So each and every device inside the bus, either camera or validation equipment or LED or LCD screen, is connected to our onboard computer, and we provide IoT for all of these components. And the other thing is a validator with high technology to validate any trip, or we can establish into a turnstile validator. And ticket vending machines should be hard case, so it should be hard to open. Ours has been vandalized, but there's no opened one yet or broken one. They're not able to break these machines. And the other thing that can be used as top-up machine or validation equipment or inspection equipment by authorities or operators. It's handheld terminal and it reads QR code and EMV card. So you can just give it can even print a QR code ticket, so you can make onboard sales by this machine as well. When it comes to account-based ticketing, that should be discussed in the first place for southern part of Africa actually, but especially in South Africa. This gives the flexibility of any payment, any fare media, as you see on the screen, any credit card, debit card, smart ticket. Smart ticket is something that can be used 1, 3, 5 times, and this can be sold at ticket vending machines. And also QR tickets are another way validating the trip by reading the QR code to validator, QR reader, embedded validator. And the other way should be the high technological infrastructure payment methods like Apple Pay and Google Pay. These are wallets, mobile wallets, and it requires an account-based ticketing. As you will see, this QR code, I want to open this a bit more because this is the most choice way of validating the trips in Turkey in our project. And now you will see why. And another news from South Africa, one of our projects in South Africa is cooperated by in cooperation with TRT, the Shwana Rapid Transit Company. Now we have announced a new mobile application. So you are the first people to hear this technological development, but now the passengers can create a virtual QR card, a virtual wallet in our back office, and they can do online top up. So there's no need for any online top up point, any top up point or point top up network, since people can do either the QR wallet, as you see on the screen, QR card, or the smart card, physical smart card. Thanks to this mobile application, there is no need to go any retail sales point or top ups point, and we will see now how it happens. You are really lucky to watch this first. As you see, this is high-end technology for mobile application payments because the QR code is not static. It's dynamic. It's changed each and every 10 seconds. So it's really secure to use, and it can be shared with the second person. When it comes to benefits of interoperable ticketing system, because the mobile application will provide you the one QR code, one QR wallet to be able to use with various modes of transport. So does EMV card as well, or any smart card of public transportation network of the city or region, either of country. Can be used in any modes of transportation. That's our aim, to bring the technology to people of Africa as a continent, but especially for South Africa as country. So the benefits of interoperable ticketing system, that is, it requires a less technological infrastructure investment or capital expense, because once you establish one system and apply this system to other modes of transportation, then you will have less capital expense for entire system, and passengers will just get the feeling of seamless integration, and they will just be they will not recognize what's happening, but they will just pay with one card or one fare media at any modes of transportation. So that's also good for the benefit of the passenger, and this is cheap and easy to maintain, since the implemented system will be the same for all operators. So you don't need any other technical people who has their own system, but thanks to one system and interoperable ticketing, the system will bring you less operational expenses and more profit as well. And this interoperable ticketing system, besides all of financial and operational benefits, it's also beneficial for environment by reducing the carbon emission when you eliminate the plastic cards of the diverse companies, even as you saw on our TRT mobility operations. Passengers will even use the virtual QR code, so it's really useful for the environment. And when it comes to operator side or to operator vision, this transport management center that is called so in South Africa, it's one platform that can be used triggering for all modes of transportation, and also it gives possibility to all fares, all systems, all schedules can be managed from one transport management center. So these fleet management system, let's say, will produce dozens of data and reports that provides the ease of an accurate and efficient optimization in seconds. This example is of one of our projects in Qatar, the capital of Qatar, Doha. We are managing about around 1,000 of vehicles, and this is their transport management system. As an experienced company, sometimes we give advices to the authorities how to establish this transport management center, since we have more than quarter of century of experience, and we have established many of these operation control centers. I can tell you around more than 100 ones. So we support authorities or operators to decide on how to establish this kind of system. And thanks to this transport management center, authorities or operators will get real-time and historical vehicle monitoring data. You can just replay any trip from its first place, for example, after 15 days. You want to control where has it gone, where the vehicle has gone, or how has it made a speed limit fraud. So you can even get informed in real time of any fraud of speed limit or harsh braking or anything. So driver behavior monitoring can also be done. And thanks to this system, you can replay any trip, or for example, of 15 days before, in saved by taking the information from servers, and then you can just monitor it from start point to the end point. So real-time or historical vehicle monitoring can be done, and you can optimize the routes regarding the needs of the passengers. You can even choose the right bus, right type of vehicle. For example, in peak times, you use big ones. In low times, in off-peak times, you use like minibuses or minibuses. This is beneficial for operators who has more than one type of vehicle. And when it comes to final benefits of interoperability, its operational efficiency, as I mentioned, will be higher than before, and passenger experience will 100% will be improved, and integrated ticketing that will give you that will be the most of the people who is considering on environmental impact of this system will be happy for the interoperable ticketing. Okay. There are many vehicles in here, as you see on the screen, and the real use case from Turkey, Kocaeli city, will come now with numbers. But I just wanted to mention the difference between the colors as well. You see different operators. The plate numbers of all vehicles are 41. The 41 represents the plate number of Kocaeli city. I just wanted to mention as well. And as you see, tram, public buses, and maritime transport, as well as minibuses and midi buses, we call them, are using one system, and this is interoperability. Efficiently, interoperability is provided. And when it comes to numbers, these ridership numbers are daily ridership numbers. So in total, there are 650,000 of people, and 3%, 30% of them, around 30% of them, let's say 25% of them are carried by credit card payment. So it's only in one city, in one day, we do transaction of 150,000 people by bank cards. So it's QR tickets, as you see. These are QR tickets.
Hello?
So you can see it's 400.
Good.
When it comes to ridership, sorry, the number of operators, this is wrong, sorry for this. When it comes to operational information, there are more than 50 operators in the system, in the ecosystem, and 2,385 vehicles are rubber-filled, and there are 68 light rail vehicles. These have the stations, so we provided turnstile validators for this light rail system, and maritime transport is also included in the system, and in total we have 3,300 of fare validation devices. The good part of this system for operators, to be able to implement an interoperable system, the most important thing is you to have a strong back office and servers and cloud system. Since the data will be saved in real time, the data changement happens, and it's saved in our servers, and the back office takes this all information as data and visual graphics. But let's talk about the service. Every day, at the end of the day, these all operations collected money from 50 different operators and 3,300 validators. Sorry, it's distributed every day after midnight in the same day. All money is distributed for 12 years without any problem. And moreover, the money is distributed in 3 different ways. Some of them get their money regarding the kilometer that they make daily. Some of them get their money regarding the tap has been made, either free, either adult or any concessionary payment. It doesn't matter. They get per person, let's say, per tap, their money in daily. and some of them get fixed fare as a daily payment. For example, let's say 10,000 rand. They are paid every day 10,000 rand, and these are the number of operators. And in the system, the only rubber wheeled vehicles are 3,385, and some of them are there are like vehicle owners from private operators. There are some vehicle owners as well. So these three different models are applied not only per operator but also per person's bank account. And it's sent to that bank account, that bank account. So interoperability is something really useful, but you need to have a strong back office and server so that your account-based ticketing system will be more beneficial for authority or operator. And then most of the technologies will come at once to your company, let's say. Don't think that this is an expensive system that will make you to reduce your operational cost, and at the end of let's say 2 years, additional profit that you make will meet the payment for these all systems that is produced in-house and developed the software in-house by our company. Thank you for listening. Just check the QR code if you want to watch again the video of TRT Momolode app. I hope we can reach to real success altogether. I mean, all stakeholders, even our competitors or authorities and operators, because South Africa deserves this success as a strong nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Inash, for sharing with us today this real case study. We will now take a quick comfort break. We are running about 20 minutes behind our initial plan. So we're going to cut it short, the comfort break, with just 5 minutes. So we will resume again. Let's make it at 11:20. Then we'll kick off with the second half of our program. Thanks so much, and we'll see everybody back at 11:20. This is your 2-minute countdown, and then we'll start again. Welcome back. Hope if you're in the office that your coffee queue weren't too long. So we're going to just kick off with the second half of our program. So our next speaker is Mr. Chapiso, better known as TJ. He's currently the business advisory and support to Sandspark. TJ is a leadership and change management practitioner that worked for several years in government entities and served on various boards and committees within the industry. In the past few years, he started working closely with small bus operators, including Sandspark, at both a national and a provincial level. Looking at it from an SMME point of view, how can we incorporate the previously disadvantaged small bus sector? Thank you, Mr. TJ. I'll hand it over to you then.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all the colleagues, including our sponsors. All right, I think we are okay if Harry can confirm.
Perfect.
We can be seen. That will help. Thank you so much, colleagues. And thanks for the introduction. I am here courtesy of Sandspark, so I need to acknowledge them. But
Sorry,
also,
TJ, the screen was right, but you've done something now. We see the presenter dates, not your slide view. You must swap the two screens.
We swapped the two screens.
Yeah, if you go to the top, swap presenter, and I can't recall the command name there, but swap presenter slide in a screen with the display slide.
Okay. Let me just redo. Okay, colleagues, as I was saying, I'm here courtesy of Sandspark, so that's the first thing that is important for me, and I acknowledge them. However, what I'll be sharing is not necessarily their view. It is based on the joint work that we have done together over the years. I've been given a license to do a full reflection on the issues. I hope my screen is okay now.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we will be sharing our thoughts in the area of SMME. In this case, we're talking about small bus operators, but we are talking from the perspective of an organized group of small bus operators, not generally just SMMEs. And the context will be clear as we go on. So if we look into Sandspark, many don't know this organization, but it is fairly an established organization. It was facilitated, its formation was facilitated by the National Department of Transport so that it can be an official voice of small bus operators. At that time, they needed an organization that will be able to coordinate and make sure that everyone in the sector is well represented. It was formed in 2009 and officially launched in 2012 after back and forth consultation, of course. The key reason why it was formed really, it was because small bus operators were left out in many of the processes that were being undertaken by government, and therefore there was a need at that time to ensure that they are also raising their voice and being accommodated. They raise this concern because every time when we talk integration, when we talk transformation, when we talk empowerment in the sector, what was looked as previously excluded was the taxis, minibus taxis, more than the small bus operators. So they were being lumped with the bigger operators, and in the process, they became casualty of what we would refer to as a missing middle. Nobody could account for them, and that is why the department thought it necessary to establish that council. The first phase was to organize them. The second phase was to ensure that now there is a meaningful process of ensuring that they are being empowered. So that's the perspective from which we'll be looking at this. Now, who is SANSBOC? Let us just share this, because half the time people really do not understand or even underestimate what this organization is about. Just in terms of figures, and these statistics are based on the 2018 elective conference, where SANSBOC recorded at that time 1,508 members. This would be operators, small operators. So a membership is based on an operator, a person who will be in business. They would be owning a bus of more than 35 seaters, and they are operating and they have an operating license. So these are the statistics based on the current term of office of these people. In terms of the number of buses, amongst all of them, we're talking 9,048. They employ an average about 22,000 people, asset-based, based only just on the buses that they have. It's about 5.3 billion. Revenue, 6.1 billion. Salaries, in terms of just the average of what they pay their drivers, their administrators, and all those people. And based on the type of work they are doing, they can account, because they are almost responsible for the whole scholar transport operation, or at least the big percentage thereof. They are 80% on learner transport operation. Only less than 2% of small bus operators are in commuter subsidy. 35% of membership here is women operators. 70% is in rural areas. And they have zero direct administrative budget from government. This point is just raised not for politics, but merely to compare between them and a fraternal organization like Santagu, because they've been established under the same terms. So whilst others are benefiting at provincial level through those direct administrative budget, at national, this has not been taking place. This information has been authenticated by a transport economist. We did a lot of work before we could, because we had to also make a submission to the panel that has been appointed by the Department of Transport in terms of this new subsidy regime. And therefore, we needed to express value of what this SANSBOC represents, or small bus operators, and why they should be given a voice. Now, when this was established, of course, there were like a lot of expectations raised, because a lot of people came together and they understood this to be a process where now they are now going to be given an opportunity. What were the expectations? Among others, that the government would put a properly coordinated process which will be guided by fairness, transparency, and commitment. This is in terms of transformation and empowerment specifically. Broader lobby to the industry to incorporate small bus operators by sharing opportunities, that it would not necessarily just be government that says, here are opportunities for small bus operators, but the broader industry will also be lobbied so that they are able to absorb the numbers that we've talked about. There was also expectations that there will be upskilling of SBOs for economic sustainability, because many of them are entry-level operators. They have not been in business, they have not formalized, and therefore as they enter, there is a need for upskilling so that they are able to sustain these businesses that they are starting. There was also expectation that there will be leveraging on existing empowerment policies and development funding institutions to support the SBOs, so that if you talk about DTI institutions where grant funding is provided, they would also be considered and be prioritized, because they were a group that is identified, put together for that purpose. The process will be deliberate, intentional, and based on measurable milestones. So the expectations were that it will not just be left to chance. There will be specific systems in place that facilitate this empowerment that we are talking about. Now, let's talk about the tools. Now that we have the hopes, but what are the tools that we're supposed to be bringing this incorporation that we are talking about? Now, we have indicated that the empowerment, just like transformation, cannot be an automated exercise, cannot just run on its own. There should be a deliberate process that will specifically identify those individuals and say, what and where are we supposed to be going? Now, the first thing, obviously, is legislation. I think Chris touched on that, and Basil, in terms of what are the current provision, grant provision in terms of legislation that are supposed to be, that are in place, which could actually benefit small bus operators. We're talking here Constitution, acts, policies, and incentives. We're raising this because if we're talking about redress, issues of constitutions comes in, because you're talking about the imbalances, which we say now there should be some kind of a redress. So it is an issue that needed to be looked at. Support institutions, funding institution, development grants, skills development, all those issues were supposed to now be coming in, and it's also part of the ingredients that are required for us to integrate, for us to empower and ensure that the industry is now accommodating those that were excluded in the past. What are the drivers of this, or the implementers? In this case, the custodian has been the national and provincial government, but also the private sector, including big operators, are supposed to be part of the implementing agents, so that we are able to absorb all these people who are being left out. The beneficiaries should be organized as BOs. There should be an agreed model, growth pipeline, value chain harvesting, so that they are also able to benefit from the strength of numbers that they have. So those are the key issues. But in terms of just quick evaluation, we would say there's good, very good legislation in place, which we cannot fault. In terms of supporting institutions, good. Implementation, unfortunately, it has been very poor, and therefore it needs attention of your stakeholders and everybody else who's involved. But in terms of beneficiaries, and this I talk about the council and its members themselves, it has been very average. The push has not been as much as it is required. Now, the big question here is why, despite good legislation, political pronouncements, available development institutions, and bureaucratic means, because there is bureaucratic means, there are people in offices who have been given a responsibility to empower small bus operators. Why, despite all that, small bus operators continue to be excluded from the transport economic mainstream? So this is a question that, based on all the other issues that have been raised by Basil, that has been raised by Chris, needs to be looked at from a specific point of an SMME. Why, despite all that, things are not happening the way we expected? Let's just look at supplementary questions as well in terms of peeling the layers. What is meant by incorporating previously disadvantaged small bus sector? This is key because in most cases, the definition is not the same, the understanding is not the same. What is small bus sector? What is previously disadvantaged? What does incorporation entail? These questions, there are answers there too, but there is no common understanding. And I'm raising it because of the work that I'm doing with the small bus operators. In the past 3 years, I've interacted with more than 160 small bus operators in workshops trying to, and I ask this question deliberately so that I can get a sense of whether they all understand what that means, and the understanding is not the same. Who should incorporate the small bus sector? To what is it supposed to be incorporated? Because when you incorporate, you bring into somebody, you bring into something. What? That needs to be very clear so that nobody leaves it to chance. What looks like incorporation? If we say we have been successful in incorporating previously disadvantaged operators, what is the product supposed to be looking like? How should incorporation be done? Process. What is the guide? Is it the same in all provinces, national, and all those things? Who are the beneficiaries? We are talking about Salzburg, for instance, as an official body, but you find that in other places, they just pick whoever is an SMME, and then once they have them in their system, they say they have empowered a small bus operator. But are they part of a formal process that can be accounted for, that is recordable? That is the other issue. So how does it differ from the mainstream economic empowerment that government is providing for? Because there is policies that are talking about the disadvantaged, previously disadvantaged SMMEs. But for an SMME who is in the transport sector, what does that mean? What is the specific tools that are in place to assist them? So all those, and when and how, we are 30 years into democracy. Where are we? Were we by this time supposed to have achieved that, or we still need to be achieving that? Do we have more time? Are we early? Are we late? We need to have some kind of timeline, and what success or failures have been recorded thus far. So those are the key supplementary questions that will come to this. We don't necessarily have all the answers to these questions, but we are raising them because Basil is saying this is not about providing solutions, but rather to spark collaborations and debate around the industry so that we are able to assist each other to arrive at something that will take the industry forward. Now, where are we now? Small bus operators are still operating in the economic periphery. That's a fact. Only less than 2% are in commuter subsidy. No specific set aside is provided to them. And you can check even the policies, the new policy that has come out. Look at what is small bus operators just in terms of wording and allocation. The specific mention is minibus taxis, not as small bus operators in a clearest term. There is no recap for them. They never received COVID-19 relief fund. No administrative budget. So this is just to paint a picture of where are we, because we cannot be talking about incorporation without diagnosing the status quo. No formal and uniform program, model or strategy to incorporate or empower small bus operators. So we need to be looking into this. I'm just raising them so that as we discuss going forward, we look into them. No protection against unfair competition. As it is now, the only area where they've been dominant is the learner transport contracts. But now big operators are now competing with them, and because they are able to show their strength, many of them are unable to compete and provide. So where is the disconnect? Firstly, there is some disconnect within government, within the industry itself. Even the beneficiaries cannot be spared in terms of taking responsibility. Now, in terms of government, there is no framework. There is legislation, there is policy, but the framework of how do we then apply to designated or identified group? There is no dedication to say this is the unit that will ensure that this sector is given this and we will be held accountable in terms of how that is supposed to be provided for. In the industry, there isn't support. Many of the big operators pick randomly on the street to say who are they empowering. So it's a bypassing of a system, because you do have a database of SANSBOK from which you're supposed to be picking, but you can only pick any person, whether they've been in construction. For as long as they have money, you can make them the subcontractor or whatever. So it needs to be looked at from that perspective. Now, the beneficiaries themselves, this industry, the SMMEs, they need to have a model. They have to make an impact. They also have to have an expansion in terms of how they diversify their offerings, so that they are not reliant only on one or single source of income, so that they don't fail and fold as businesses. Now, no specificity in terms of policy of the designated groups. It's only a generic empowerment legislation, but what is the specific legislation or policy for small bus operators? So all those are the areas that would need to be looked at. What needs to be fixed? In our view, we're saying if we're talking incorporation, it must be empowerment and transformation. Those two are very critical, because you cannot divorce them. The industry benefits in terms of transformation, but empowerment. So the government must take a deliberate effort to empower SBOs through set aside. It's a big issue. And I know Basil, when they were still with Saboa, they were working in terms of seeing how best we can work together, so that when you talk set aside, it's not a tug of war between small bus operators and the bigger operators, but rather a deliberate effort of accommodating each other. Now, you need a dedicated unit that would work with small bus operators on the mogul and milestones. This is on the government side. Established operators must improve collaboration with small bus operators by partnering or subcontracting through established structures. Unity of the industry is very, very important. I've just talked about, I think Cornelius started the process of reaching out to SANSBOK as Saboa. Basil fought tooth and nail before COVID disrupted us to ensure that the two can collaborate and maybe form a body, one body that can talk to government in one voice. Now, we also need to establish a database of SBOs who are affiliated and compliant, from which incorporation or empowerment partners can be sought, so that people can know, established operators can know where to go when they need a partner, and they go through formal structures rather than to just pick from anywhere, and then that does not translate into a recordable process. Ring-fence learner transport for SBOs. I've just indicated how unfair and unprotected the sector is to the big operators or people who just come in the industry and they have never been in transport before. Support mechanism should be put in place to protect SBOs. Capital funding, operations system, and skills development must be provided. I must commend TITA. They have worked a lot. In the past 3 years, they have invested quite a number of programs into small bus operators. So they have done a lot there. But the problem is, how do others come in? Because still, after you give them skills, they must have a capital for buses and all those things. Now, what is our call to the industry? Harry, I'm mindful of your time, so I'm moving a little bit fast so that you don't call me to order. We need to unite the industry through establishment of one structure or associate structures. It must be formal. Half the time, what happens, you see Saboa uses the strength and its formal establishment to fight the system when there is an injustice. With the small bus operators, because they do not have the resources, they can't take on an injustice and fight. We need to develop a common model for industry-driven economic empowerment. What is our understanding? How do all of us work towards one path, rather than to sit in your corner and say, I'm an empowered company, only to have taken people who are not part of a formal established process? We need to have a common agenda through which you can engage government to accelerate incorporation. Because, once you are divided as an industry, you get to be exploited. So you need to have some kind of narrowing some kind of in the process, so that everybody, when they look at you as an industry, you are speaking in one voice. Develop a national database of SBOs from which empowerment can take place. Establish an inclusive value chain harvesting model for the industry. I've just indicated the figures in what Sandsborg represents in terms of value. Many people don't know that. They even don't believe those figures. And in reality, this is where all other suppliers are supposed to be coming in to say, this is how we can assist, because they're already doing that at Saboa. Why can't we assist small bus operators that if they are properly united, formalized, then suppliers of be it systems, commodities, and their consumables, they are able to be supplied at economics of scale. So those are the critical things that are required. If you say you want to incorporate them, it has to translate into something that goes to their bottom line, so that they are able to see that this industry is indeed bringing something for them. So we need to prioritize industry required skills development. In this case, I've participated in a number of discussions and also written papers where we are already talking about how do we ensure that or plan for the 4IR skills that are going to be replacing but for a small bus driver in the rural areas, they have not even seen that old machine of which we call set-right, which used to give a ticket. So you can just imagine how the industry is moving fast, but yet leaving behind those that are at the bottom. We need to find a way of striking a balance of uplifting whilst we modernize, so that no one is left behind. And I know this sounds like a tag from somewhere of not leaving anyone behind, but the reality is small bus operators need to be given an opportunity in that sense. So I will stop here. As I've indicated, this is based on the consolidated work that we have done as the business advisory. It's not a pronouncement on the policies of Sandsborg, nor represent or misrepresent their. However, it is work that we are doing every day to ensure that we add and enhance their policy position in terms of what can be given to government to assist them, but also to unify the sector so that all of us are able to say there is economic justice done to small bus operators. So I'll stop here and hand back to you, Eric.
Thank you so much, TJ, and thank you so much for being the voice of the small bus operator industry for us today. Really appreciate it, and thank you for taking the time. For our last presentation for today, I want to introduce to you Mr. Brian, who's a seasoned commercial leader. Currently, Brian serves as the African Director at Optibus, a leading software technology company providing innovative software as a service solutions that address common challenges in the public transportation. He's a chartered member of the Institute of Engineering and Technology in the UK. Today, Brian will look at the impact of digitizing the public transport planning and operations. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you very much, Edme, for that introduction. Let me just share my screen. Okay.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you, Harry. Let me just zoom in so that everybody can see. Okay. Great. So, yeah, as I start off, let me also extend my thanks to both Unitrans and the Transport Forum for putting this webinar together. And obviously the discussion so far have been quite engaging. So I'll just dive straight into the topic of today, digitization of public transport planning and operations. By firstly looking at the landscape in Africa. And we're looking at this maybe from a macro level before zooming in into South Africa, where we are obviously discussing a few issues. So as most of you are aware, already know, general public transport in Africa is underdeveloped. No surprises there. Not keeping pace with the rapid urbanization that we see in cities across the continent. Also, it's dominated by informal modes, minibus taxis in South Africa, matatus as we call them in Kenya, where I'm from, danfos and so many others. Also, there's high levels of both air and noise pollution, especially in the cities. And really, public transport accessibility is also an issue when you're looking at rural areas in terms of facilitating people traveling from their homes and wanting to access it. So generally, it's looked at as a necessity and not really even a luxury. So next slide. So in terms of South Africa itself, and I've been there a couple of times, interacted with quite a lot of bus operators, and as has been mentioned so far, even in these discussions, the services currently are not integrated with other modes. So when you're talking about bus or BRT, commuter bus, municipality buses, not really integrated with either the minibus taxis or the train services, which obviously leaves a gap in terms of harmonizing operations. Also, planning and operation management is done manually on pen and paper or Excel. There's also, in terms of drivers, inequality in terms of duty rosters for drivers. So you find drivers working very long shift hours, not really getting adequate time to spend, let's say, at home with their families, and it affects staff morale and can lead to things like absenteeism, abuse of sick leave, and such other things. So the service and reliability has also led to low riderships in many different parts, as we've seen. And crucially, in this very difficult economic times, is no visibility on potential cost savings, both from an operations perspective, but also from a maintenance, in terms of vehicle maintenance and so on. So what would be the benefits for digitization, for either, authorities that are tasked with planning public transport or operators who actually have the task to execute public transport? So when you're talking about, I'm putting this in perspective of obviously the day-to-day functionalities that are done by operators in this case. So we're talking essentially here about moving from pen and paper-based work to actually a digitized work. And what you can see in front of you is a depiction of a paper schedule versus an optimized digital schedule. So if we look at this from an end-to-end perspective, we can see that in terms of route planning, so that's where it starts, as we know, and we've had talks about planning in this webinar so far. So when we talk about actually creating of new routes or new economic areas for operations, obviously being able to do it digitally is of a huge advantage, especially with proprietary software that links quite well with Google Maps, allowing you to change from different modes or views, and you're actually able to either create an entire network from scratch or through a simple importation of either Excel or one of the more common data protocols out there, which leads to you actually defining a timetable. So once obviously the distance that the distance between the stops and the travel times that you're looking to achieve will lead to you creating a timetable, a digitized timetable that's dynamic. And you can also leverage on different performance insights from different technological products that are out there. For example, CardAVL or telematic systems can feed back into your timetable, and you can actually optimize it so that it's you have a timetable that is akin to the actual operation that's happening on the ground. So we're moving on to vehicle and crew scheduling, the dark art of scheduling. So this is where you're basically assigning trips from the trips that you're getting from your timetable to your resources, let's say as an operator in this case, to your drivers and to your vehicles. And there's so many rules has come out from this webinar and policies and things that maybe you have to adhere to, certain constraints that you're required to work under as an operator. So obviously, digitization in this case is important because something that used to take months, weeks, can be done in minutes or sometimes even seconds in terms of optimizing to a situation that is beneficial to you as an operator. And obviously there's no right or wrong here. It's more what do I want to achieve in terms of how I run my public transportation. EV is a topic, and I'll on it in terms of the benefits in terms of EV electric vehicle deployment. Also rostering and really looking after the well-being of obviously the drivers, making sure that you meet certain union ratios that maybe you might be required to work under, whether by the National Department of Transport or others, and your actual operations. So your operations in this case now is what you do on a day-to-day in terms of assigning your planned schedule for an actual driver and to an actual vehicle that will go out and operate on that specific day. Touching on passenger information and also driver apps. So these are all the things that really, when you look at it holistically, when you're talking about end-to-end public transport operations, if you're able to harness on the power of digitization, can really help operators, authorities, and other different stakeholders within this industry to make public transportation better. Now, I'll touch on EV a bit more because I know obviously the talks of EV, not just in South Africa, but in the entire continent of Africa, with the rising costs, obviously, governments and private sector are looking towards the transition. But it's not enough to really buy a bus and an EV bus and expect, okay, I procure the asset now, off I go, I'm carbon neutral. No, I think there's a lot more when you think about it to it, especially when you look at the scheduling element of it. So the reality of the matter is when you're talking about transition, it's something that's going to happen over time. So let's say an operator, you're already operating, let's say, internal combustion engine, and you're looking to move to EV. So how do I start the transition to zero emissions whilst operating a mixed fleet? Yeah, and then gradually over time, you're able to transition and while still meeting the requirements that you have to comply to, and also be able to bid for new business that comes as a result of it. Secondly, and usually all importantly, cost savings. So obviously, when you're talking about electricity costs, because when you talk about optimization of a network, you can consider as many factors as you deem relevant for your operations. So there's electricity, charging times, location, road conditions, traffic, weather, and a lot more. So the ability to kind of optimize an entire network as well is very important for EV transition. And then lastly, and pertinent mostly to the passengers in this case, is to ensure seamless service even whilst you're doing this, and integrate charging times into your daily operations so that you make sure that there are no disruptions, let's say in terms of passenger service and quality as well. So the other thing that's always important when you talk about technology is also just to consider the topic of integrations, and which is obviously very important because no system out there can operate in a silo. I mean, it needs to fit into a certain business which has already certain systems or would like to procure certain systems. So it's important to also consider how this would fit into an ecosystem of an operations that needs to progress in a certain way. So yeah, so there's different, of course, different systems out there, including the one Inash has just talked about, validators, card AVL systems, and so on and so forth. Now, in terms of the impact of this on cities and operators in South Africa, so largely I've just summarized them into about 6. So first one is reduce the amount of time and man hours required to make changes. So you're saving time, you're quickening your processes internally. generating timetables which are dynamic and can easily be updated based on demand. So you're not stuck in time. You're constantly evolving, even as there are new economic zones coming up. Certain ridership is evolving in different stations or different bus stops and so on. So you're able to tweak your timetable to adjust to that. Save on resources and align on operational efficiency by optimizing the network, as I've said. A consolidation of your route network to reduce complexity and the internal resources needed to operate them. And then data, centralizing your data because, obviously there's different ways, operators, authorities, and others are functioning today. Pen, paper, Excel, WhatsApp groups, and so on. But this is actually an opportunity to have all that consolidated into what you'd call your single source of truth, where you have everything all narrowed in and easily accessible for your organization. And then also the topic that was mentioned earlier in terms of moving towards how do you integrate? Because technology has to be front and center in terms of when you're talking about integrating an entire public transport network consisting of different modes. Yeah. So obviously this is the opportunity now for technology to actually enhance that and make it possible. So in terms of Optibus has been able to do this in over 5,000 cities. I'll just play a short clip that just kind of summarizes it in 1 minute. Sorry for that, apologies.
Mobility is changing cities. It's time to rethink mass transportation so cities can thrive. Introducing the next generation of planning and scheduling platforms with super quick and super powerful optimization and planning on a cloud-native platform that is ready for the future using advanced algorithms and artificial intelligence for superior results, showing real business metrics so you can choose the best scenario. Drag and drop route planning. Quick and simple timetables that seamlessly connect to schedules and rosters. Industry-leading vehicle and crew scheduling for compliance, rosters, and relief scheduling. An industry-leading module for scheduling electric vehicles. Artificial intelligence to predict on-time performance. Analytics for better operational insight. Optibus is deployed in
Sorry, Brian, your
hundreds
view.
of cities worldwide, winning tenders and saving millions of dollars.
Latency there.
Yeah, it's buffering a lot, Brian. What you can do is send me a link.
Working in some of the world's largest transit networks. Try Optibus today.
Brian, you can send me a link to this video and I'll include it to the post-event email. It will go out to everybody.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. There was a bit of latency. Let me just go back to screen share. Right. So to summarize, sorry about that, but there will be a link share as Harry has said. So powering public transportation in over 5,000 cities globally. So in terms of public transit, public transport in this case, we're talking cities, authorities, and operators. Also different modes such as airports, university, corporates and employee transportation, like in Silicon Valley, the likes of Microsoft, Facebook, etc. And also in events and charter transportation. Lastly, in terms of, again, our footprint, so Optibus is in different cities. In South Africa, we're talking UCT, University of Cape Town, Bombela, Basco in Mpumalanga, and also close to home, Kampala with Tondeka Metro Company, which is a startup a bus operating company that's looking to grow its fleet size up to 3,000 buses. So to conclude, just a few points here to conclude. Firstly, it's important to invest in digital tools that can help run your operations more efficiently by reducing manual work and save resources. As we've seen, planning and scheduling are vital components in successful deployment of EVs and management of charging infrastructure. So it's not just the asset, but also the methodology, and also making sure that you can integrate it in your current operations. ITS has a wider impact in reducing traffic congestion, travel times, safety, and also reducing the damage on the environment in terms of the CO2 emissions, from the fleet. And also, lastly, South Africa can become, or actually is on its way to becoming the testbed and breeding ground for tomorrow's urban transport systems. Thank you so much, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ryan. We really appreciate it. So to end off our session for today, we are going to spotlight our various speakers for today. And it's time for you to ask them any questions that might have come up while they were speaking. I'm going to hand over to Harry and to Basil to just administrate the Q&A for us today. But just in terms of some of the logistics, if you can either post a question in the chat, which Basil and Harry will then direct to the correct speaker. Alternatively, if you would like to ask a question, you can just switch on your camera and raise your hands with the buttons at the bottom of your screen. So Harry and Basil, I'm going to hand it over to you to do the Q&A for us.
Thank you, Edmay. Much appreciated. Can we please have all our panelists to switch on the cameras and unmute themselves?
Thanks, Harry, and panel team. I think, and Chris alerted me to a caveat in terms of the, it's almost not a duplication. We look at it as a reinforcement or underscore of the key issues that have come through. No matter which narrative you're taking or wherever you're discussing, and the panelists all seem to be pulling that through: integration, funding, planning, inclusivity. These are all the issues that kind of dominate these type of discussions. But I'm glad everyone reinforced the same point, just through different data sets and principles. Harry, I don't see any hands up. Are you coordinating or?
Let's ask people if they want to ask a question. You can unmute yourself. Those panelists who haven't got their cameras on or not being unmuted, I assume they're not taking part in the panel discussion. But anybody wants to ask a question, you can unmute yourself, and then once recognized, we can allow you to ask a question. I see there's Zandile Kati. I don't know, Zandile, if you want to ask a question. But please, guys, please remember to keep it short, and you can direct your question to one member of the panel or to the panel as a whole. Thank you, Zandile.
Thank you very much, Harry, and thank you very much to the presenters. I just wanted to us, particularly with the last presentation, in terms of the digitization, like it's the first time that I see that in terms of even with the electric bus, you would need also the digitization in terms of the planning and the law. And I would love to hear more about that. I know that maybe it was not done in detail in this presentation, but if ever the presenter, I think Mr. Brian Mongera, if he can give me more details on that one, even if it's outside law, I'm comfortable with that. I don't want to delay the discussion. Then. Thank you very much. Then.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Zandile, for the question. So basically, just to summarize, and as I was trying to just explain in the presentation, when you're talking about digitization, especially in the context of operators, I don't know if you're one, but there's a lot of complex decisions that often is taken for granted that operators have to contend with on a day-to-day basis in terms of making decision of where to plan their transport network, how it should operate, what kind of rules and constraints are you being asked to work within, whether National Department of Transport from a policy level or even within your current organization. How much time do you want to give your drivers as a, let's say, as a break, or how long should you take? So when you talk about digitization, it's the ability to transform the manual work that is done, in this case, in this very complex environment, into a more digitized, more robust and quick to change process. So that's where technology comes in to be an enabler.
Thank you, Brian. I just want to say that the panelists now can mute themselves if you're not speaking, so that we can reduce noises. Thank you. I don't see any questions in the chat room. I think all of them has been answered. I don't even see questions on YouTube. The guys on YouTube are welcome to text questions there, and a number of guys on YouTube as well. Let's give them a second or two. As it seemed to me that people are stunned by your guys' presentations today. There's Tyson. Tyson, you want to ask a question?
Thanks, Harry. I'm trying to, okay, yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you very much, Harry. And my question, I think, is also going to be directed to the last presenter, Mr. Brian. Looking at the digitization of the public transport, I think I'm going to talk about more South Africa because I'm in South Africa. Looking at the cost of getting a technology system as a transport operator or a municipality, how do we make sure that we don't end up spending more on the digitization of the transport system than the saving that we are making in terms of the maintenance of, like we've indicated, that operation can be costly. You need to save in terms of the resources and also maintenance of vehicles and all that. But oftentimes it happens that the cost of getting the systems it's a bit more expensive, or it becomes more than the saving that you are actually making. So how do we make sure that we balance the two and realize the saving that we're talking about in terms of digitizing transport, public transport in the country, or as a transport operator? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Tyson, for the question. So I'll answer it in two parts. So the first one is maybe considering cloud-based, cloud-native systems, and I'll tell you why that's advantageous from a cost perspective. So number one, for operators, you're looking at the current assets, the assets that you have. so you're basically, what SaaS systems allows you to do is to subscribe to the assets, software as a service, SaaS systems, I don't want to make any assumptions, allows you to subscribe to the assets that you currently have at the moment. So you're not overpaying, let's say, very high capex costs on various infrastructure needs that are not relevant to you at this point in time. The second thing to consider is, how can you quickly validate return on investment from a software system? Now, there's different ways of doing this in terms of business case studies. A proof of concept is something that can give you a quick and easy outlook of, what can I expect, or a value proposition, like where you take a small section of your operation and within a few, weeks or months, depending on the data that's available, you can actually optimize and see potentially the kind of savings you would get if this was rolled out to the entire business. So there's two angles there, one in terms of the business model and one in terms of a business case that can help you understand what kind of savings can be realized from full adaptation. I hope that was clear.
Thanks, Brian. That was clear. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Basil, I'm also waiting for you to come in with your wise comments. And yeah, so ladies and gents, any other questions? Seemed to me these presentations were so powerful that we haven't got questions today. Just want to check the YouTube, guys. It's live on YouTube. No questions there. I think what we then can do is we can ask for closing remarks, and then we end off with Basil and Edmé to close the session for us. Maybe Basil, your closing remarks, and then Edmé can close the session for us on behalf of Unitrans. So if we can start with TJ, and then Chris, and then Brian, and then Inanj, and then Basil, closing remarks, and then Edmé closing the session for us. And from the Transport Forum, thank you very much for Unitrans hosting us today. Big hand to all our sponsors. Thank you so much. So let's start with closing remarks. TJ.
All right. No, thank you so much, colleagues, yourselves, Harry, for shouldering all of us and bringing us to platforms, screaming and kicking to discuss important issues about the industry. So that is highly appreciated, including the sponsor, Basil in particular. I think you have touched on key issues, and I know that your passion about the transformation and empowerment is the reason why you insisted that we should be here. So that is highly appreciated, both from your company and yourselves. And the colleagues, I just hope that we can continue to be included from the National Executive Council of SANSBOC, the Secretary General, Final Kodumo. They have expressed an appreciation that and encouraging that we must always now to be part of this, so that we are able to be updated about things that are happening, but also our plight can be heard. So we really, really appreciate this, and thanks to all who contributed.
Thank you, TJ. Chris.
Thank you, Harry. Yeah, I think my presentation was probably more at the strategic level, where many of the other presentations were more operational, but I think in a way it gelled quite well, because in the end, I think the key message is that I wanted to bring about is there's been very little change over the last 20 years or so in the public transport environment, although there's been very good intentions to transform and to optimize. But in the end, I also just want to echo what many of our stakeholders have said in the 25-year plan. It's about integration, integration, integration. And that's integration of services, it's integration of payment systems, it's integration of information. And in the end, it is, and then on the operational side, is to bring everybody into the same fold and and to have an optimized system. So I think it's exciting times. Hopefully we can make it work over time, and that in the end it's about meeting the demand and the desires of the people that we want transported by public transport to enable the shift from private vehicles to public transport, and that we have a more sustainable system and a more sustainable future. Thanks a lot for the opportunity, and I think this is a great forum. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris, for kind words, and your presentation was excellent. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Let's have Brian closing remarks.
Yeah. Once again, yeah, thank you. Let me also reiterate by thanking both Transport Forum and Unitrans for this opportunity and for putting this together. You know, it's often said when it comes to technology, men are only as good as their technological development allows them to be, as you saw with my video that didn't quite work. But ultimately, even when we're looking at deploying technology, which is a necessity, and will have a lot of benefits for operators, we also need to consider and remember the forefront, the human element, the people behind the scenes. This is not about removing jobs and things like that. It's actually allowing you to operate in a more efficient, more streamlined manner that will benefit everybody and ultimately the passengers, who are the most important in all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Much appreciated. Inaj.
The thing that I will say is, first of all, thank you very much for mentioning many problems and also solutions at the same time. So French has a word, there is not any problem but the solution. Here is a platform to find the solution. The problem always occurs, as I call Master Basil knows very well in transport sector. The problem will always be occurred, but we, the transport professionals, will be there, either technology provider or regulation organizer, let's say, or this kind of interactive like webinar hoster, will find the problem and give the solution. So thank you very much for all of your effort for presenting and hosting this event, and hope to see in much more events, and hope to host many people, many participants, and explain them the existing technologies and the future of public transportation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Inaj. Much appreciated. Basil, kindly close the panel discussion for us, and then over to Edmund to close the session for us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Harry. Yeah, enough thanks all around. And I think to the panelists, yeah, when one tackles a topic like this, it's so broad, and you could follow a whole day and 3 days of conferencing and still have sidebars. But just picking up on the highlights from the top, Chris, your acumen and expertise over the years positioned you to talk expertly on strategy level. So I appreciate that, because I think we needed that. We were almost going to fall over each other talking about the topic today. And I think at the end, it's come out at a pretty nice balance. In terms of forward looking, the technology space, I think you guys have given some insight as to what is possible from both Optibus and Kencart, and how it can be used to fast track, seamlessly optimize, cost efficient. And then sitting in the middle, TJ, and not by default, but sitting in the middle is the issue of inclusivity. All right. So I think we did a good job as a start, Edmay. And we took this position because now I think, Harry, as the host today, we can blow our own vuvuzela a little bit. We were somewhat critical. We were balanced in the approach, but today was about initiating. We've had many initiations in the past around discussions, but Unitrans is a quiet leader and at the forefront of the passenger sector. I mean, our diversified fleet speaks to that. our range of services, we speak to that. But the market's reaching a kind of a plateau and a premium. It calls for alternative thinking. It calls for different leadership. And on that score, I think that's why the thread was around collaboration, inclusivity, and progress towards transformation and transition. And we want to be part of that process and be part of assisting in that. So I think as a tail off, if we come out on the other side of the next 14 days at a political level, I do believe there'll be a renewed political will to fix things for South Africa. We must be ready. And we must galvanize our captains of industry and our stakeholders, because this is collectively within our realm to find solutions and make it better for future generations. But thank you to everybody, and Edme for being a fabulous host and keeping us in the background. Over to you, Ed. Any last comments? We've not had a chance to collaborate on the questions for the two lucky draws, but I'm going to fire it up and see how attentive people were. Okay.
Oh my gosh, yes. I forgot about that one. Will make up for that. Thank
Exactly,
you,
Harry.
Becky. You can blow your bugle indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that through the power of doing, we can turn the obstacles into opportunities and our problems into possibilities. And I'm really looking forward to see how this industry is going to progress for the better of not our individual organizations, but for each and every commuter in South Africa, and for South Africa as a whole. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I really hope that you've got your nuggets of information and inspiration today. Basil, do you have questions for our last two prizes?
Correct. Yeah, let's have a bash at it. Thanks, Edme. So as I said, we didn't collaborate as we normally do with Harry and yourself. So hopefully it's a good enough question, Harry. So colleagues online and everybody, what new product has Unitrans brought to market through some recent innovative positioning? I'm a tough Q&A person, Harry.
Quantum.
There we go, Tyson. Here. I'll do a Bongani from 702. I'm looking at the producers. Yeah, they're all good. The new Quantum 4x4 variation. But yeah, the Quantum in itself is not new, Tyson, but we've modified it from its standard spec to a 4x4 variant. We'll shortly be releasing some marketing and promotion to that. So, Edme, I don't know, but the next one's going to be really testing people. So the question was going to be pretty much around Unitrans again. How many countries in Africa do we have a footprint as Unitrans? Going once. Warmish, Ray Kashagan. So, all right. I'll probably move it on along, and let's say it's just something more related to the other presenters. Anybody in the group knows and can. There we go, Tabo.
Yes,
Okay.
it's only 10 countries.
Spot on, Tabo. Well done.
Yeah. I used GPT, sorry.
Use Chat GPT to search.
I'm surprised there are very many countries.
So well done to the two of you. I think, yeah, that's great. Also, listening well on what the Unitrans positioning is. And I think that officially then, Harry, constitutes a wrap. You'll get the details of Tabo and for the prize allocations.
Yes.
Harry, thanks again. Good job. We had some technology challenges, as we do, and as when it's not the most opportune time. But I think a good session all round. Thanks to the presenters. Thanks to everybody who attended. And Harry, I will send you the correct presentation to upload, because I think for some reason the one that pulled through on mine was not the fully functional one. Edme, thanks. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks so
Yes.
much.